Brizuela is absent. Andrea Jordan.
Here.
Shaquille Ali.
Here.
Clayton Koo.
Here. Thank you. Next is the Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Scott, could you lead us in the pledge this evening?
Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next is item 4, governance team meeting guidelines. Governance team members will review the governance team meeting guidelines. Next item is item 5, approval of the agenda.
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
First and second, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. That was unanimous. Next is item 6A, board member acknowledgement and commendations. I will start on my left, Mr. Ali.
All right. So I'm acknowledging tonight the great work that our governance team did on January 22nd, 2022. We met at 8:30 on a beautiful winter day at our district office here for our board self-evaluation and governance leadership training on good beginnings. And as we gathered, the first question we talked about was, with all that happened over the last year, how do you feel? And I appreciated that because as an educator, I do focus on the emotional quotient and not just the intelligence quotient. So it was good that we started off with being able to identify our feelings and set a nice tone for our self-evaluation. And the way that I felt that day was I felt gratitude and just happy with all the things that I've been able to accomplish during the pandemic, which is now turning into an endemic, but also the resilience of all our students and families in our community. So with everything that's going on, I still feel grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Jordan.
Yes, I want to also echo Trustee Ali's comments. I was very grateful for that session. It really helped us as a governing board align better and making sure that we're focused again on our students as that they are our highest priority. And they're the reason why we're on this board. The other thing that I wanted to mention was it is Black History Month. And I am a proud advocate for this month, even though it is the shortest month of the year, just because we need to definitely embrace everyone's differences and what especially African Americans and Blacks have brought not only to our community, but to America as a whole. And for any parents that are listening out there and children, today is National Pizza Day. So if you've not had dinner yet, thank you. You're welcome, children. Please go out and get some pizza for your kids. And I'm looking forward to this evening's meeting.
Cool. Thank you. Ms. Liaga Anaway.
Yeah, I will say that it was a welcome time together for us to be able to spend time with Luann, who I've always appreciated her wisdom coming from CSBA, but what felt even better was that we were a complete board. That felt really good, especially in a time of disconnectedness. That was much needed. I particularly loved that we were able to once again revisit our vision, what we'd like to see, what we forecast to happen here in our district. And I wasn't surprised that a lot of things that we had all raised, there was a lot of alignment, which I think is a testament of how we are in sync and speaks to the leadership that we are looking to continue here and some of the change that we really want to keep a pulse on, especially during times of just a lot of mental wellness being needed. So hearing all of us raise that in particular was much appreciated, was a sense of validation. But I too want to shout out Black History Month and also Happy Lunar New Year. So for me, as a Pacific Islander and a brown woman, I know that had it not been for our Black brothers and sisters, a lot of the issues that we raise, a lot of times we were never seen or heard. And as a Pacific Islander person, I know that growing up in San Francisco in particular, it was because of our Black leaders who were able to bring us into the conversations, seat us at a table in a seat that wasn't there for us, but they made room for the Pacific Islanders to be seen, that we were able to really penetrate some of the circles that we continue to be a part of today. So I just really want to show a lot of love and respect for the aloha that was extended to us and that exists here in San Mateo County as well. Had it not been for that leadership, we would not be able to be where we are today. So I'm very grateful, very, very grateful.
Cool, thank you. I don't want to say what everybody said already, but I also agree that the retreat we had a couple weeks ago was great, especially in terms of conversations and the board's vision, as well as happy Black History Month, as well as happy belated Lunar New Year as well too. Next is item 6B, Superintendent Comments.
Thank you, Mr. Koo. So as the board is fully aware, cases of COVID are coming down across the community and across our county and the region. As you know, our schools are a reflection of our community, and so in our schools as well, we are seeing drop in cases. We're down about 85% of where we were 1 month ago on January 10th. We had under 50 cases reported to us during the course of last week. It'll probably go up a few because we get some late reports, but still very different from where we were a month ago. At the same time, it's 3 times higher than we ever were in the fall. So just to keep a perspective, it's all relative. It's 3 times more than we had in the fall. So we do still know that there's a lot of virus in the community and we need to act accordingly. You also may have heard that San Mateo County will be dropping its requirement for indoor mask wearing. But at the same time, health officers are still highly recommending that individuals choose to wear their mask indoors because there is a lot of virus present. And so that will be an important message for us to communicate. The choice factor and the encouragement and the vigilance when there is a lot of virus in the community to wear your mask for your own protection, your family's protection. So that will be interesting. However, school mask guidelines and requirements have not relaxed. We're still required to wear masks in schools and school buildings, though that is also being communicated that may change. How it will change is not clear. I do expect it to be always highly recommended, and whether or not it's required and to what extent, we're not sure. Another note of positive news is that we were able to secure just yesterday a 3rd vaccination clinic in our school district. Vaccination is a proven mitigation strategy that helps lessen the effects of a COVID infection and the disease that surrounds it. So we're going to be doing it on March 3rd. It will be, again, at the TR Policita and Susan B. Anthony gym. And we're doing something a little different this time. I asked and was able to get approval for it to span the last hour of school so that parents can give consent for their child to get vaccinated if the child's not going to freak out at the needle. And school staff can walk them to get their vaccine during the school day, get their vaccine, get their card, go home. So we're hoping some families will take advantage of that. I know it's hard for families to take a day off from work We chose Susan B. Anthony and T.R. Policita. We did a survey. We had a chunk of families that said they'd be comfortable with that option. And then at 3 o'clock, it's open to the public. So families who want to be with their child to get the vaccine can sign up for a slot from 3 to 6. So we'll see we'll see how that works. I'm happy that we can offer the in-school option for those two schools. We'll be offering the pediatric vaccine, good for students 5 to 11, as well as the adolescent vaccine and the adolescent booster. So that's about it.
Can I ask a question? How are we communicating to the public that it's open to the public at 3 o'clock?
So we're only communicating to those school communities that it's open to them from 2 to 3. And then at 3 o'clock, we'll have a flyer that'll be distributed district-wide to families, and it'll be on the My Turn app as well. So, but only people, the general public can register from 3 to 6.
Got it. And I guess I should rephrase that question. When I'm thinking public, I'm also thinking the other school sites.
Yep.
So are we informing the parents of the other school sites?
Of course. Yeah, we'll send that out. We're working on a flyer right now that we can send out. It'll be in next week's newsletter.
Perfect.
And we'll also share it, I'll give it a week or two for just our schools, and then I'll share it with the surrounding districts so we can make sure that the slots are all filled.
I have a question too. What date are you thinking that you'll make it the flyer available to other districts and the public?
Probably around right after we get back from President's Week, end of February,
Okay.
or maybe even during President's Week, because not every district has the President's Week holiday.
I'm only asking because I'm a part of a couple of networks that will help amplify and
sure.
get the message
Yeah.
out. Also,
From what we learned last time, many people make appointments, few people keep their appointments. And so I'll speak to the provider and see if we can take walk-ins like after 5.
Yep.
And then they can see how much vaccine is available for a walk-in to get their vaccination.
thank you so much.
Cool. Thank you so much. Next item is item 7A, consent agenda. The administration recommends approval of the start items on the rest of tonight's agenda.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second?
There's a first and a second. May I please get a roll call?
Ms. Leah Inga Anawai,
Aye.
Ms. Jordan,
Aye.
Mr. Ali,
Aye.
Mr. Koo.
Aye. That was unanimous. Next item is item 7D, resolution number 22-02-09B, National School Counseling Week. The administration recommends adoption of resolution number 22-02-09B, designating the week of February 7th to February 11th, 2022 as National School Counseling Week. Ms. Vidales?
Yeah, so this is an annual appreciation week that we've started to do the last couple of years that we have counselors. And so we want to let our school community know that it is National School Counseling Week, and that they should, and that they may do events at their school sites to recognize their counselors.
Cool, thank you. Any comments or questions from board members?
I have a comment. I just want to say I'm really glad that to see this on the agenda as we had discussed about what we talked about in our meeting. I mean, the counselors are really needed at this time. We're all working through, mental health issues across our community. And so we recognize the need. We recognize and support our counselors and our students in this way. So I'm thankful for this.
Yeah, and not as a result of, but we'd already planned it, but at the March meeting, we'll have our counselors' comments and our whole wellness department come and share what are the different strategies used for all students, for some students, and for a few students. The the pyramid of instruction, to give the board a better handle and idea of how we serve our students and at what level do we get outside support for our students.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
I could say a lot more, but I'll just agree with everything that Trustee Jordan said.
Same here as well too. I realize the last couple of years especially has been pretty hard for a lot of people in our community. So I see this as just a small but appreciative way for us to say thanks. If that's all the comments, I will entertain a motion on this item.
I motion to approve Resolution 220209B for National School Counseling Week.
Second.
There's a first and a second. May I please get a roll call?
Ms. Leah Inga Anawai,
Aye.
Ms. Jordan,
Aye.
Mr. Ali,
Aye.
Mr. Koo,
Aye. That was unanimous. Next item is item 7E, Governance Handbook. The administration recommends the board review and adopt the Jefferson Elementary School District Governance Handbook 2022 updates discussed and developed with the assistance from the California School Boards Association at a governance leadership workshop on January 22nd, 2022.
I move that we approve the handbook.
Second.
There's a first and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That was unanimous. Next item is item 7F, Memorandum of Understanding between the Jefferson Elementary School District and AFT 3267 regarding COVID supplemental paid sick leave for the 2021-2022 school year. The administration recommends approval of the Memorandum of Understanding between the Jefferson Elementary School District and AFT 3267 regarding COVID supplemental paid sick leave for the 2021-2022 school year. The Memorandum of Understanding, effective October 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2022, includes COVID supplemental paid sick leave of up to 80 hours prorated 2-week equivalent based on FTE and rate of pay for unit members who are unable to work due to COVID-related reasons specified in the attached Memorandum of Understanding. Mr. Vidalis.
Yeah, let me just speak to this a bit. F, G, and H are all very similar to each other. And if you've had an opportunity to read or watch the news today, you may have heard that Governor Newsom signed a new law today that's very similar to these memorandum of understandings that we've developed. Ours is a bit more generous at the beginning since we're starting on October 1st. The California law begins on January 1st. And the California law is a bit more generous at the end since our MOUs expire on June 30th and the California law will expire on September 30th. So they're very similar, both thinking along the same lines. We developed this a couple of weeks ago, well before the law was even being put into written form. So it's a good thing. So yeah, the board, when this is 3 different groups. One is our certificated teachers association. The second group is our classified association, and our third group of employees are unrepresented management and confidential employees.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from board members? If not, I will entertain a motion on this item.
I'll make the motion that Memorandum of Understanding between Jefferson Elementary School District and CSEA number 233 regarding COVID supplemental paid sick leave for 2021 to 2022 school year as recommended for approval by the administration.
Do you have a speaker card for this item, or which one is it for?
It is for this item. The speaker has asked to speak after the item is voted on. Is that allowed?
Oh, that's the board's direction, so.
Yeah, I'll just allow it after the
Okay.
comment. Yeah, that's the request of the speaker.
Well, that being said, I would like to make a comment then at least.
Sure.
This is a good thing, obviously, and I hope that any teachers that were affected and, tested positive and had to stay home. Or maybe they even tested positive and it could have been a false positive and they had to stay home and they didn't have symptoms or whatever happened. I hope this, will aid them and that they didn't lose anything before we gave them this back. That's it. Thank you.
So I actually now have a comment too. So I know in previous meetings, we did have some teachers come and talk to us about their feelings around it and how they had to use their regular sick pay. And so I'm really happy to see this here and how that is going to supplement, if they've already had to use their sick pay and how it'll replenish that balance. So I am, again, just grateful to see it on here. And we're ahead of the county and the state with getting this forward. So I'm grateful for our team and the conversation we've had around this to get this moved forward quickly. So I second the motion.
First and second.
You've got a first and a second. I didn't plan on making a comment because I thought making the motion was validating a lot of the things we had said before. This resonated with us. We had some discussion around this before. And for us to be able to make this happen tonight is gratifying. So I found it fitting to make the motion.
Just want to double check. Anybody else have any other comments or questions? Cool. So there's a first and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. That was unanimous. So we have one speaker who would like to speak after this item. Paul Hagan, President, AFT 3267. And you have 2 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Michael. Good evening. I want to, on behalf of all of the teachers, and I think I could probably speak for the classified employees as well, tremendous thank you for taking this action tonight. You've already acknowledged what this means to the employees of the district. This is a very, very important step that the board took. I got to say one thing also, that, I brought this up with the superintendent the first week we were back in January and was told immediately, yes, yeah, we'll talk. Let's talk. Let's see what we can negotiate. This was before we knew what the state was going to do. And even when the state came up with their plan, the district continued to negotiate with us in good faith and offered us a deal that was actually better than what the state was providing. And I just want to thank the administration and the school board for this action. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. Next item is item 7G, Memorandum of Understanding between the Jefferson Elementary School District and CSEA 233 regarding COVID supplemental paid sick leave for the 2021-2022 school year. The administration recommends approval of the Memorandum of Understanding between the Jefferson Elementary School District and CSEA 233 regarding COVID supplemental paid sick leave for the 2021-2022 school year. The Memorandum of Understanding effective October 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2022 includes COVID supplemental paid sick leave of up to 80 hours prorated 2-week equivalent based on FTE and rate of pay for unit members who are unable to work due to COVID-related reasons specified in the attached Memorandum of Understanding.
We've already talked about this, so I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
There is a first and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. That was unanimous. Next item is item 7H, COVID supplemental paid sick leave for unrepresented, certificated, classified, and confidential classified employees for the 2021-2022 school year. The administration recommends approval of COVID supplemental paid sick leave for underrepresented, certificated, and confidential classified employees, psychologists, management, including principals, vice principals, deans, program coordinators, program directors, assistant superintendent, and the superintendent for the 2021-2022 school year. The leave effective October 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2022 includes COVID supplemental paid sick leave of up to 80 hours, prorated 2-week equivalent based on FTE and rate of pay for employees who are unable to work due to COVID-related reasons.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
There's a first and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That was unanimous. Moving along. Next item is item 9C, 2020-2021 Financial Audit Report Submission Extension. Due to the additional review on federal compliance stemming from the Coronavirus Relief Fund, ESSER, and GEAR Learning Loss Mitigation Funds, the administration requested and has been granted an extension of the fiscal year 2020-2021 financial audit report submission. The fiscal year 2020-2021 financial audit report will be presented at the March 9th, 2022 board meeting. The administration recommends the governing board accept this extension. Mr. Laura, could you give us an overview of this item?
Hi. So to speak a little bit about this item, there's just additional scrutiny that's being placed upon the learning loss mitigation funds, more specifically the coronavirus relief funds across the state. And so our auditors are just doing their due diligence to ensure that when the federal government comes to audit them and comes down to us, that everything's clear to go. And so we've got granted an extension. The date for the 2020-2021 audit deadline was the 31st, but we've kind of pushed back until February 28th, when we'll be presenting the audit on the 9th, along with our second interim.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from board members? If not, I will entertain a motion on this item.
I'll make a motion. Let's see. Fiscal year 2021 financial audit report submission extension as recommended by the administration.
Second.
There's a first and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That was unanimous. Next item is item 9D, Wireless PA Bell and Emergency Notification Systems Project. The administration recommends the governing board approve the purchase of wireless PA Bell and Emergency Notification Systems from Visiplex Inc. for a total amount of $230,946. Part of the purchase will be done under COPS Office School Violence Prevention Program Award number 2020 SVWX 0148, ORI number CA418ZZ for an amount of $124,174. The remaining balance of $106,772 will be funded by the general fund. An additional 10% contingency will be included to cover work to address unforeseen conditions be pre-approved by the district administration. Ms. Laura, could you speak on this item as well?
Yeah, so we have prior to me coming here, I believe it was Stephanie Martinez applied for a federal grant, and it's for an emergency PA system. And so what we're planning to do is to use these funds before they expire, and I believe they expire next year, June 2023, and it'd be a great addition to our security system in PA.
Thank you.
How would this PA system be used? Would it be? Can you give us a little more information about that?
Well, back in, I think, 2019, pre-pandemic, when we had time, Ms. Martinez wrote up this grant to improve some of the safety measures in the schools. They stay local, so it would just be communication within the school. It's not communication with outside law enforcement per se, but it is in partnership with local law enforcement. They did need to indicate that they're in favor of this system being used at our schools as part of the grant. It's a Department of Justice grant, so it needs to show partnership allyship or, some kind of working together with local law enforcement. And then the pandemic hit. And so this fell way back to the last, like maybe even on the counter. It wasn't even the back burner. And so we've been getting some notifications that say you need to use your money. And so we've finally put the bids together and figured out what it's going to cost us to put this into place. Communication at a school site in a time of emergency is very important. And so to be able to have a system that can speak into each of the classrooms from a central location is going to be important. We do not have that capability right now. So.
I actually had a question. Is this going to be done at every school site?
This is for the large middle schools, I believe, the 3 large middle schools. Yeah.
Large middle schools.
Yep.
Got it. Do we have a plan for the others? Because you said we don't have this at all. So do we have a plan for the other schools at any point?
Well, we're going to be looking at the board authorizing a GO bond, general obligation bond that has safety and security at its core. So this could be funded under that.
All right. Okay. One more question. Outside of allyship or partnership, how else does law enforcement? What is other involvement do they have in this?
None. Just a sign off to say that they're in agreement that this is a good system to implement.
Perfect. Thank you.
If no other comments, I will take a motion on this item.
I'll make a motion. I want to thank Trustee Jordan for your questions, for clarification. It's much appreciated.
Second.
So as,
Oh,
I'm sorry, Yeli, did you have a comment?
no, I was seconding, but
Thank you.
yeah.
Okay, so first and second, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Aye, that was unanimous. Thank you for explanation. Next is item 9E, presentation on general obligation bond capacity by Keegan. A representative from Keegan will provide a presentation on the district's capacity for a GO bond.
I'd like to introduce Chet and Chris, and they're here from Fresno and El Segundo, and they're all the way up here in Daly City. So I'd like to welcome them to Jefferson Elementary School District.
Thank you. Good evening, President Koo, members of the board, Superintendent Vidales. As was referenced earlier, there is a general obligation bond measure for consideration later in the agenda. This presentation will go over some of the various factors. Chris and I will review your assessed valuation, funding amounts, and also just the general interest rate environment and assessed valuation. So looking on slide 1, anytime we look at a general obligation bond, we're really looking at 2 sides of the equation. The first side is what the district's funding needs, and that includes the scope, the cost, the timing of those needs. And then also, how do we raise funds to pay for the district's various project needs? So that is through a tax levied on the district's assessed valuation. And we do make sure that voters approve what those tax rates are. And that is also included within the resolution as well. Next slide, please. So this next slide is a snapshot of the district's current assessed valuation. You can see in the bar chart that historically, the district's assessed valuation has experienced very strong and consistent growth. In this most previous year, the district grew 4% year over year, and you're currently at $12.6 billion. Taking a look at the statistics to the right, the district's historical averages are primarily all above 5% in the 20, 25, and 30-year timeframes. Next slide, please. Oh, I think we've got a slide 3. Okay, thank you so much. So if you take a look at the chart to the right, this represents bond interest rates. And if you look at the very far right, interest rates have increased as a result of inflation and the Fed winding down its bond purchasing program, and also plans to increase interest rates over the next 2 calendar years. We are expecting an interest rate as early as next month. But notwithstanding the increase in rates, historically, if you look at the chart to the left, going over 50 years, we are still at a very low all-time historic borrowing costs. So for districts issuing general obligation bonds, the lower the interest cost, the better for district taxpayers.
We could go to the next slide, please. District voters have supported the district's bond measures in the past. 3 different bond measures approved by voters, starting in 2001 with Measure H for $52 million, then Measure I in 2012 for $67.5 million, and then Measure U most recently in 2018 for $30 million. All 3 measures received very strong voter support, ranging from about 68% to 77%, which is fantastic. All of these bonds have been issued, so there is no remaining authorization at this point. Next slide. On slide 5, we have a snapshot of the projected tax rates for the 3 bond measures I just mentioned. The current tax rate for the district is $60.30 per 100,000 of assessed valuation. And as you can see from the chart, it's projected to remain relatively stable for the next few years, with a large decline in 2030 and then declining over the course of the next 14 years until 2044, when the final bonds mature. And this does assume relatively conservative assessed valuation growth. You can see in the footnote at the bottom, 0% growth for next year, then 2%, then 3.5% annually thereafter. So definitely conservative compared to those growth averages we saw on the earlier slide. And the next slide, please. So before you tonight, as an action item, is a bond measure for $45 million in new general obligation bonds to be potentially approved at the June 2022 election. This new bond measure would have a tax rate of $15.70 per 100,000 of assessed valuation, and would have an assumption of interest rates between 5 and 5.5%, which is very conservative compared to today's market. So we are building in a cushion in case interest rates rise, as we expect them to. We're being conservative again on the assessed valuation growth rates, the same I mentioned on the prior slide, 0, then 2, then 3.5. We are using 100% current interest bonds, which are the type that pay interest semi-annually, so no capital appreciation bonds, and a final year of tax in 2051. We have this scheduled as 2 series of bonds, as you can see in the bottom left-hand corner, to be sold in 2022 and 2024 for $22.5 million each, to get to the total of $45 million, with an estimated repayment ratio of 2.11 to 1, which is far below the 4 to 1 maximum allowed by law. Up in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see the tax rates, $15.70 in every single year, with the 2 tranches layered together so that taxpayers see a consistent bill for this measure. And on the bottom right-hand side, you can see how the new measure would stack on top of the existing Measure H, I, and U bonds. And that's all we have for you tonight, a quick snapshot of what the bond potentially could look like. Are there any questions on these slides?
Thank you for your presentation. Any questions or comments?
Yes.
Mr. Ali?
So can we go back to slide 2, please? Okay, so my first question is, how are we rated? You know, how is the valuation determined?
That's a great question. The county assessor will, on an annual process, levy or calculate what the assessed value is for every individual property. So your assessed value includes all taxable property within district boundaries. That's primarily residential, but it also includes commercial, industrial, and it excludes governmental properties, nonprofits, schools, and churches. You might have some residents that haven't moved since the 1970s. Their assessed valuation under Proposition 13 is limited to an annual growth rate of no more than 2%. So even though their current home value, the market value might be $1 million, for example, their assessed valuation might be something significantly lower, like $200,000, and any taxes set against or approved by voters would be set against that lower assessed valuation. Anytime a property changes hands, the sell price or the market price becomes the new assessed valuation, So a resident that just moved into district boundaries that does have a $1 million assessed valuation, they would then be limited to a 2% growth in each year going forward.
Thank you. Let's see. Oh, so basically the only way that we're able to have the revenue to pay back the people who buy these bonds is just from the property value going up in our district?
Property values going up, properties turning over, and also new construction within district boundaries.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
I have a comment. Because we don't have any authority on how properties change hands or if property value goes up or down based on what is happening. I guess I don't know if this is a comment or a question, but is there anything that we can do to help move this forward outside of, I guess, the information you're giving us, sharing that with other people? What do you suggest?
So not much the district itself can do in terms of property values because those are set by the assessor. What I'd say is that the district does have a very strong history of growth within your assessed valuation. And because we are using a more conservative number of growth, 3.5% versus the over 4% averages, we are fairly confident that we would have no issues. To the extent there wasn't the growth we anticipated, what that would mean is that that $15.70 tax rate might increase. So instead of being $15, maybe it becomes $17 if there was some great recession that occurs in the future. Conversely, however, if you exceed that 3.5% on the long term, that tax rate would go down. So instead of being $15.70, maybe it's $13. So it is an estimate at this time. That's why in the documents before you'll see estimate written throughout, because we don't know what the future holds, but we do try to be conservative as much as we can.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Yeah, so can I make another comment? Okay, so that explains more to me some of the things that have happened in the past, because I know that you've come back to us before and we've been able to give people money back. So that's because the property values. So what? Yeah, how does that happen?
Yes, so we've been, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So if you can explain the refunding process, what you've come to the board several times in the last 10 years with different it's called refunding because we're funding it again. It's not refunding like you get money back. So it's two words. So if Chris, you wouldn't mind explaining to that. I think Mr. Ali, right after you came on the board about 10 years ago, we had our first refunding opportunity. And so Ms. Hyatt can explain when bonds become eligible and when we take advantage of that.
Sure. So yes, in the past, the district has been able to go back and refinance your existing bonds. So within the last 10 years, you've done that 4 times. In 2012, you saved taxpayers $3 million. In 2013, almost another million. In 2017, $1.6 million. And in 2020, $5.1 million. So when the opportunity presents itself, when interest rates are lower than when the bonds were originally sold and time has passed, we are always monitoring for those refinancing opportunities to save your taxpayers' dollars.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool, thank you. Any other questions or comments? If not, I realize it's just an information item, so I will proceed. But thank you very much for the presentation tonight. Next item is item 9F, resolution number 22-02-09A, resolution of the Board of Education of the Jefferson Elementary School District ordering an election and establishing specifications of the election order. The administration recommends that the board approve resolution number 22-02-9A, authorizing a bond election for June 7th, 2022.
Yes, so we have Mr. Nick Huer here, who is our legal counsel, bond legal counsel, who will help answer any questions on the resolution. As you see, it is a legal document, very hard to read and understand. The highlights of this resolution is that this will the board will authorize placement on the ballot, on the June ballot, the California primary, a bond asking for authorization to sell bonds for these purposes. Our last bond, Measure U, and this bond are very similar. The difference here is that we've extracted the workforce housing from this bond. But many of the activities that we undertook in Measure U only were able to go to a couple of school sites, maybe a third. We have 2/3 of our school who still need some up-to-date fencing and are still with our old fencing. One of the things that has surfaced is the need for outdoor eating and learning spaces with COVID. And so creating more of those spaces, I think you can see one at MP Brown. You know, even though that was designed before COVID, it just was like, wow, this is what we meant when we need outdoor spaces, places where kids can eat outdoors and open air and covered, or learn outdoors. So that's something that we want to do at more school sites where they can fit. Then, of course, there's just the general repair and upgrades that happen in schools, ventilation systems, roofs, other facility needs that show up that we want to be able to have the funds available to take care of that. And, you know, as Ms. Jordan mentioned, the surveillance and a PA system at every school site that we could certainly explore looking into that and expanding it. We did put video surveillance at all of our school sites under Measure U. And that's helped tremendously in terms of bringing down incidents of graffiti. And so that's helped a lot. And then sometimes when there's disagreements about what happened in a student altercation or an adult interaction, we can always roll back the camera and say, here's what the camera shows. We don't get audio, we only get a video of it, but it helps settle some disagreements.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from board members?
I did notice something in here, and this is probably me just not knowing this, but it talks about Citizens Oversight Committee. Can you speak to that a little bit more?
Yeah, we currently have a Citizen Oversight Committee, and they will be presenting their report to you here in the next few weeks. It is part of the bond language where we're asking for a 55% passage rate. And in order to pass a tax at that level, a bond, then the district needs to commit to establish a Citizen Oversight Committee. The Citizen Oversight Committee becomes knowledgeable about the language that the voters passed. And on a regular basis, the district presents reports to the Citizen Oversight Committee about how money was spent and how it's in line with the bond language. The Citizen Oversight Committee does not approve projects or deny projects or decide projects. Their purpose is to be a group of citizens from a wide variety of perspectives that provides oversight for the citizens and taxpayers on making sure that the money was spent in a way that's in accord with the language of the bond. Mr. Hewer, I don't know if you'd like to add to that.
That was a perfect summary.
Yeah, actually, next Wednesday, we'll be meeting with our Bonds Oversight Committee, along with our auditor, to go over the Measure I, Measure U audit report. And usually in that meeting, it's myself, Bill Heath, and we go over the expenditures of the different projects and how they align with the different measures that we pass.
Perfect. And so since we already have one, we wouldn't need to cause the appointment of one, or would we need to do a reappointment at that time?
No, generally we incorporate the new bond into the same. I mean, some members will be like, I've been doing this for 10 years. Can I step off? And so we will refill openings as they become available.
I think you might know, I'm not sure if some of the same people are on, like some of the trustees from another district.
We have some well-known citizens on there. We have Ms. Tejada, Rosie Tejada, Mr. Tom Norris, who is a former board member in the high school district, current community college commissioner, a former teacher who represents a retired organization, Adrienne Zanini. Some of you might know her. Ms. Pamela DiGiovanni, a current city council member, was appointed prior to being a council member. I can't think who else. Oh, Mr. Tony Bayudan, currently works for Supervisor Canepa, but was appointed again prior to being in that position as a community member. So Mr. Lauro can speak about other members, and we do have openings for parent members, active PTA members. So if you know of any parents that would like to serve in this capacity, I know I've approached a friend of Mr. Ali on a couple times, but everyone's very busy. But we do try to fill them on a regular basis.
We are on YouTube, so any parents out there, I hope you're hearing this.
That's right.
Any other comments? Cool. If not,
Just one thing to note, the vote should be on a roll call basis for this item.
yep, cool. Thank you. Thank you for letting me know. So I will now entertain a motion on this item.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution. Make sure I'm on the right item here. Resolution that 220209A. Resolution of Board of Education of the Jefferson Elementary School District ordering an election and establishing specifications of the election order.
Second.
First and a second, may I please get a roll call?
Miss Leah Inga Anawai,
Aye.
Miss Jordan,
Aye.
Mr. Ali,
Aye.
Mr. Koo.
Aye. That was unanimous.
So one thing you didn't know, but needed to happen, we needed to have 4 votes in favor of this in order to qualify for 55% passage rate. So thank you. We got 4 votes. And so this will be on the ballot June 7th. It's a primary election. We think there's going to be a lot of school-friendly votes out there. We should be able to garner 55% with little effort. We've done very well in the past with some effort, I think, but we only need 55, so we don't need 70. Ms. Tejada would disagree. She got us to 70%, but we think that we have a good chance.
Thank you. Next item is item 9G, Governor's Budget Update. Mr. Michael Lauro, Assistant Superintendent of Business Services, will present an update on the Governor's January budget proposal for the 2022-2023 school year. Mr. Lauro.
Thank you. I'd just like to thank Chris, Nick, and Chet for all their experience and their expertise in this, in helping us with this GEO bond. They provide tons of insight and all the help in the world for us. So I appreciate them and thank them for coming here tonight. So I'm here now to talk to you about the governor's budget proposal. I'm excited to let you guys know this is just a proposal from Governor Newsom. Things will change as the year goes along with the May revision. And again, when they approve the budget, but this is just their initial proposal for what's going to be happening in 22-23. In prior years, in 2021 and even 1920, we've seen the pandemic, how it's changed our budgets from the governor's budget to May revision to actual passing. So things can change at the drop of a hat. So just remember when we're going through this that things can change and they will change, and this is just a proposal. Next slide. So the first thing I'm going to start off with is the overall economy of the United States. It's continuing to grow. I bet there's some withholdings about the consumer price index and inflation and how that's affecting the economy as a whole. As you can see, the Dow Jones fluctuated a decent amount from January 2021 into July. And with the latest Omicron surge, it also affected the Dow Jones. I'd like to point out that 50% of the taxpayers in California pay 50% of the taxes in California are paid by 1% of Californians. So this is something that we're going to explore a little bit more on the next slide. So we're talking about the state economy. Like I said, when we first had encountered COVID, we had a $54 billion deficit. And so coming out of this, we are coming out with a 45.7 budget surplus, meaning that the stock market was really good for those individuals and also for the state. Like I said, these high revenues are strong, but the pace of growth is maybe unsustainable. So one thing that the governor is proposing in his budget is that we get a lot of these revenues for in Prop 98 as one-time funds. So this will help protect our minimum guarantee. Other things to know that leading into the bond, that the California median house price increased 9.8% in 14 months. So that's a good indicator of how the assessed value can continue to go up. Next slide. So how K-14 education in California gets their funding is through a device called Prop 98. So there's 3 different tests for Prop 98. The first test is education would get 38.35% of the total general fund revenues. This test 1 is usually done in years of ADA decline. Test 2 and test 3 include ADA in their calculations. I mean, test 1 doesn't, but test 2 and 3 are used when ADA declines and we have either a strong or weak economic year. The Prop 98 guarantee is $102 billion, which is a $2.93 billion increase over the 21-22 guarantee. A lot of the new spending that's within Prop 98 is one-time restricted funding. So this doesn't necessarily help districts with declining enrollment. And like Superintendent Vidal's, his analogy is we lose money or we're starving during the day and we don't get that base funding. And then at night we get dessert, and it's desserts are like cakes and ice cream, and we get all these additional restricted categorical programs, but we don't get the main portion of our base funding. So that's what's happening. The K through 12 Prop 98 share is 87.2 billion. Next slide. So there's a lot of information on this slide, and I really want to stick to a few bullet points, okay? For the 22-23 budget, there's going to be a 5.33% COLA, cost of living adjustment. The first interim cost of living adjustment for 22-23 was 2.48%. So this increase is definitely helping our base funding. However, the cost of living adjustment, it's a mechanism in order for us to keep our dollars level, and it cannot outpace enrollment drops. Other things I'd like to point out is that there is a $500 million increase to special education base funding. So Governor Gavin Newsom is a proponent of special education and ensuring that those student groups get the proper funding. Historically, those student groups in special education have been underfunded, so this is a welcoming sign from Governor Gavin Newsom. Another thing that I want to point out is there is ongoing funding for universal access to school meals. Starting in 22-23, we will be required to provide 2 free meals of charge to every student. On a yearly basis, we contribute about $500,000 to $600,000 a year into our food program. So we'll see how this is going to impact us in the future. But historically, we have been contributing into Fund 13. And a lot of other things on here are all one-time basis. These are things that do not help declining enrollment, but they are intended to provide other infrastructure, other high school, college, dual college enrollment. So giving them students a chance to get classes that give them credit for high school and as college as well.
Can I
Next
ask you a
slide.
question about slide 5?
Sure.
Can we, okay. Well, I wanted to just, first ask a question about the electric buses. That sounds interesting. So are we trying to get rid of our, regular combustion buses and turn into all electric or?
Yeah, so first of all, this doesn't apply to us. We don't own any school buses. And the other part of it is for many of the districts that do own school buses, they're in the rural areas where they need to travel many, many miles, and they have concerns about whether or not the buses can make it through the day without being recharged. So for urban school districts that own their buses, this will be a help. And in the Bay Area, there's very few school districts that own their own school buses. Most of us contract that service out.
Yeah, our students are bused by San Mateo County Office of Education. So it'd probably benefit them.
I just wanted to also make a comment about slide 5 because when I was on the board before, we had many conversations about providing food for our students for free. We were ahead of the game. Yeah. And I remember our board, we challenged the district to think, beyond what we were doing. And so, once again, like we always say, we set trends, and I'm glad to see that now we have the support, to provide it free for all the students.
And definitely during the pandemic, most students get a lot of their meals at school. So when we were able to hand out meals to students, that's obviously has a positive impact on our community to make sure that students and children have the opportunity to get meals during the day. So I agree.
Sorry.
Okay.
I was going to wait till the end, but since he's talking on this slide, I did have a couple questions.
Sure.
From a universal meal standpoint, right now, are we seeing any waste with like in terms of, okay, everyone has access to food, even though not everyone is taking that access to food? Is there waste, and is there a way to ensure that maybe, I don't know, I'm just, what is going on with that?
So it's a guessing game to know how much food to produce on a daily basis, and that's something that our food service department undertakes. We definitely want to make sure there's enough food so nobody goes without. But we do know that not every student eats everything that is on their plate. And so we do have composting programs at our schools just to make sure that at least that food waste gets used in another productive way, if not nutritionally. And many of our school sites do have share tables where if there's an unopened package or a fruit that they can place at the table, and other students who would like more of that can come and take that. It's really difficult, especially because the portions for elementary and middle school are often so similar. The hamburger that an 8th grader would like a second of, a kindergartner will take 3 bites of and not want any more. So,
And I actually am talking about waste more so in terms of prior to you giving it to the children, right? I think when we charged people, we knew, okay, this kid is getting, we knew the amount of children that were going to get the food versus now it's like, well, because it's open.
yeah, we do still need to keep records of
Yes.
how many students are fed each day.
Perfect.
Because that helps with our reimbursement. Now, I don't know, Mr. Lara, you may want to speak to this. When we were charging our students, the district did need to, on an annual basis, make a contribution to the food program. because the fees collected and the reimbursement rates did not pay for the program. And I think Ms. Kessler spoke to the board about this.
Yeah, I could.
Because, like we said, income, like raises for the employees who produce the food have gone up, but our rates have not, nor reimbursements have not. So, Mr. Laura, if you want to just, your estimate on the state's reimbursement program for this, will it help or support that? Or will it be about the same?
It should help, but with the volume of food that we're supplying now, and we have to, by law, we're required to do so, I'm expecting it to be the same, around $500,000 to $600,000 at year end, but we don't know for sure yet that dollar amount. But like I said, historically, this is a program similar to special education, underfunded. And so there's always going to be a contribution there from our general fund.
Perfect. Okay, I have another question on
Sure.
the transitional kindergarten expansion. I know that we have it at Garden Village. Do we have it at any other school? And if not, how do we intend to use these funds to expand what we already are doing in our district?
Do you want to speak to that? I can answer it. We do have, I believe we have 4 transitional kindergarten classrooms right now. Garden Village, Westlake, where's the other one? Daniel
JFK.
Webster and JFK? Yes, JFK. I know they had a big lift classroom. I couldn't remember if they had a TK classroom. We have 4. Right now, if next year's TK class grows by a 4th, which is the additional years that months that are being added, we have enough capacity in those classrooms to accept those new students, but we'll be watching enrollment in the next couple of months to see if we need to open a 5th classroom. The other thing that the funds will be used for is because part of the TK program now is to ensure that there is initially 1 adult for every 12 students in the class, eventually 1 adult for every 10 students. So we know that we will need to hire some additional staff to meet that requirement. And I don't know if Ms. Scott, if you have anything else to add around TK. Yeah, but we have capacity right now. Our classrooms are very small. We have about between 15 and 18, maybe less at most of our programs. I think the one school where we have close to 24 is John F. Kennedy. There's a big need in that part of town. So
Thank you. That was helpful.
I have one more question, actually. So
Sure.
It's regarding the universal school meals. I know probably a couple years ago, I know we've been talking about how the program is I think you mentioned Superintendent Dallas sort of outweighs the revenue that we technically get in. And I know you said it would cost about between 500 and 600,000 or so. I guess, do we still anticipate that with the state providing some of those additional funding for running the program, will we still technically run in like the red moving forward? Or is the goal hopefully that it can sort of stay a little flat in terms of sort of how much it takes out from our
yeah, I think
general
Mr. Lauro answered that. And we are budgeting about the same level of contribution that we've had in the past. It's nice when we don't need to make that contribution, but we're sticking to that for now. The other complication that a universal meal program does for a district like ours, and Mr. Lauro will hit this when he talks about the local control funding formula, is that we are funded more for students who qualify for free and reduced lunch. Now, the measure that we use to do that is the free and reduced lunch application. And when there are free meals for anybody who wants one, there's little incentive to fill out a free and reduced lunch application. So the challenge for a district like ours is to ask families who might qualify for free and reduced to please fill out the application, because it will support programs and funding for the district and schools. And so we didn't drop as much as we thought we would. Our families did follow up, and so we keep records of who qualified last year, and we really pursue them again. And we, we'll have some other incentives built in next year. with the ELOP program, the Extended Learning Opportunities Program. We need to prioritize students who qualify for free and reduced lunch for participation. And so we need to tell families, if you fill out this form as part of your application for the program, you will get greater consideration to participate if you qualify. So that's an additional incentive for families to fill out the form, and that will help us in the future as we get our funding.
Yes, also to add to that, there are other mechanisms for which we can determine if they are an unduplicated student, if they receive other direct services from the state. It links up and lets us know that without turning in an alternative income form, that they do qualify as well. So we do also certify like that, but there are still a majority that we would still require those forms.
I have more questions. now.
Sure.
So now that it's required by law for us to provide the free and reduced lunch meals, let me start with, what was the reduction from prior to the pandemic when we were charging in terms of people submitting that form? What's the percentage change?
So in a couple slides, you'll see that number.
Okay,
So
sorry.
remember your
Okay, well,
question.
I'll hold to that. And then I guess the second part is in terms of incentivizing. I mean, because the form specifically says free and reduced lunch, can we change the naming?
Oh, we
of
have.
it?
There's a new name. It's called Alternative Income Verification Form.
Got it.
So,
Okay, and the reason why I asked that is because I'm thinking, well, is it because people are like, well, I'm getting it anyway, why do I have to fill out a free and reduced
no, and
lunch
a
form?
big incentive this year was that the state was offering pandemic electronic benefits cards for families who qualified for free and reduced lunch if they qualified by August 15th. And so in the summertime, we told all our families, if you think you qualify, especially kindergarten families, fill out the form now, and you'll qualify by August 15th, and they'll get the additional electronic benefit card for purchase of food. So.
Thank you. So the only thing I guess I would say is maybe we need to do better communications and PR around the reason why, because it's okay to put it in when they start school as a part of the packet, and it's okay for us to talk about it, but I think if people truly understand the impact, maybe we'll get more.
Yeah, and so there is a lot of that happens sort of with the folks that we know qualified last year. It's like, hey, you haven't returned your application. This really helps us. We do some broad announcements, but those people we can capture generally at the beginning of the school year. But it's the families that have qualified last year that don't have a current application that we spend the month of September following up with.
One last question. So do we still have a hard time getting them to eat breakfast because it's so early? Or because I know we had talked about some creative ways to get them to eat the breakfast too.
Yeah, so I'll have to check on that. I know that the pandemic and response to cases and stuff have put a lot of creative plans on hold until things stabilize a bit. I know that we were talking at some point of offering a second chance breakfast club, to happen during the morning recess.
Right.
I think some schools experimented with it, but we'll have a presentation here in the next couple months from our food service program that we could provide some data around that.
Yeah, next slide. It's okay. So some more to add on to these one-time funds. There are one-time $937 million for the Expanding Learning Opportunities Program for infrastructure focusing on arts and music. As you guys can recall, the ELOP, which is different from the ELOG, ELOG being the Expanded Learning Opportunities Grant. That was one time, and the Expanded Learning Opportunities Program is an ongoing program that's going to be continually funded under Gavin Newsom, or proposed to be. Other things that he's proposing are some early literacy proposals for high needs students and to train literacy staff, and also to expand multilingual schools and libraries. Again, he also puts in $62 million one-time funds for identification of learning disabilities. Governor Newsom is a proponent of funding special education and making sure that those students have the resources that they need. Also, state preschool program is also going to have $309 million ongoing that's going to intend to assist our California state preschool programs. Next slide, please. So, in 21, 22, and 22, 23, there's going to be $2.2 billion and $3.1 billion deposited into the Prop 98 Rainy Day Reserve Fund. Senate Bill 751 puts a reserve cap. So when this reserve exceeds 3% of the K-12 proportion of the Prop 98 funding, there's going to be a trigger for school districts to have a reserve cap of 10%. So any uncommitted funds that we have in Fund 1 that's over the 10% would need to go back to the state, forfeited. This is kind of I think that when school districts right now that are losing enrollment, when we're being tight, ensuring that we have at least 3 months or 17 to 18% of our unrestricted fund balance for any unforeseen circumstance, it's kind of I believe it's not, the words I'm trying to say is it's not beneficial for us to lower our reserves just because we're going to be facing an average daily attendance or enrollment cliff, and you guys will see that in the future of what that's going to look like. But this is a measure that's going to be in effect and it's going to adversely affect us. Next slide. So this is the calculation for the LCFF funding. So when we talk about our average daily attendance, we talk about cost of living, and this is how it's multiplied into our funding. If you guys want to come to my office and I could show you what it looks like, this huge calculator, I'm more than happy to show you guys, but this is just the base calculation. Next slide. So with the governor's proposal, the entitlement that we have for 22-23, the first line here is our base funding, which is $44.4 million. Our supplemental concentration funds, which are generated by English learners, homeless, free and reduced lunch students, that's $8.3 million. So our total entitlement is $52.7 million. So there's a small increase, and that increase is due to the COLA adjustment from 2.48% to 5.33%. Like I said, the COLA, it helps our dollars stay online with the cost increases, inflation. However, it can't outpace our loss of enrollment and average daily attendance. And so this bottom portion here is the funding variance that we have in 21-22 to 22-23. So we lose about, next year, we lose about $5.8 million in our general fund. And that's due to losing about 700 students, 800 students in the last few years. When the pandemic first started, if you guys can recall, we had an average daily attendance enrollment loss. So we would keep our 1920 average daily attendance funding for 1920, 2021, and 21-22, and then 22-23, we're going to lose that. So there's a lot of, you'll see in the coming slides what Governor Newsom is planning to do, but this is something that's affecting us. And we've talked about this during first reading, but I'm trying to reiterate the loss of funding that we're having. Next slide. So this is our multi-year projection. So if we look at first interim, we're projecting to have a small surplus, but then in the coming years, because of the loss of average daily attendance protection, we are going to deficit spend $4.1 million in 22-23, $3 million in 23-24, and $1.8 million in 24-25. And we'd be losing about 4% each year over year of our total available reserves. Next slide. And this is just another chart that's showing our unrestricted fund balance, which helps us out when we are in years of deficit spending. This can't be below 3% of our total expenditures. So as we progress through the years, our deficit spending continues to eat at our unrestricted fund balance. Next slide. This is just one more slide showing our estimated deficit spending as of the January governor's proposal. The deficit spending at first interim was $4.8 million in 22-23, $4 million in 23-24, and $2.8 million in 24-25. With the increased COLA, the deficit spending went down slightly, but it's still not enough, like I said, to cover the loss of average daily attendance and enrollment. Also, I want to note that the Legislative Analyst Office estimated the COLA to be at 6.17%. So that's in 22-23, which is going to give us a little bit more money, but still won't fill up the hole that we have here. The reserves that we have can only delay, the coming revenue loss. So this is, again, something that we have to pay close attention to. Next slide. So we keep talking about losing enrollment, losing average daily attendance. There are a lot of proposals that are floating around in Sacramento. So currently the law is that your funding would be greater of current year ADA or prior year ADA, right? So if you have less students than you did last year, you'd get last year's students funding in order for you to kind of step down. However, throughout the state, California has lost 200,000 students when year over year, when an average year over year would be about 20,000 students. So there's been a lot of, like I said, a lot of talk in Sacramento about changing the way how LCFF or local control funding formula is going to be affecting these school districts. So the one proposal that Governor Newsom did say, or was presented to different school districts, were there would be the current year or prior ADA, or it'd be a computed average of the prior 3 years ADA. So it would be funding for 22-23 would be 1920 pre-pandemic ADA, 2021 hold harmless ADA, which would be effectively 1920, and then 21-22 actual ADA. Just to throw numbers out, if we were to have the governor's proposal for this new funding of LCFF, we wouldn't be deficit spending. So it's pretty big. Like I said, this is just a proposal. In May, when we have the May revision, it will change. But this is some good news for a lot of school districts in California. I know that other big districts like San Francisco Unified School District, as well as LA Unified School District and Oakland Unified School District, every major school district in California is losing, that is funded by LCFF, is losing revenues due to enrollment loss. So this is just one way for us to step down and have us fall softer than falling off a cliff. So next slide. So some of the things that aren't included in the multi-year projection is any of the governor's new one-time program fundings. We don't know what our amounts are going to be for that. Any of the one-time revenues in the out years. We don't have any negotiated salary and benefit increases. Right now, we're using our current P1 average daily attendance. So if it continues to go down, that's not factored in. So if that goes down, our general fund revenue goes down. I did not, being conservative, I did not budget any of the governor's proposals for changing the way LCFF is funded. So that's not included. And also no other federal stimulus funding or relief funding is included. Next slide. Okay, so next steps, if we continue with the current funding, is trying to figure out how are we going to close the gap in our deficit spending. It's working with our stakeholders in the community and developing the LCAP with Ms. Scott. The next thing that needs to be approved is the LCAP, and our balanced budget has to be adopted by June 30th. In developing the budget, there's a lot of things that still need to be clarified. Is the governor's proposal for the ADA cliff and funding, is that going to change? Which one of these one-time programs is actually going to pass? How will our expenditures change? And once the state adopts the budget in June, we can make adjustments within 45 days to our budget. Any questions?
Yeah, Mr. Laro, so I was confusing presentations, and I thought we were going to discuss the unduplicated student counts, and when I deferred Ms.
okay.
Jordan's question. So what drop in unduplicated students did we see year over year, if you could remember off the top of your head?
Year over year, this year, it was 0.2%. Prior years, it was a bigger amount. I believe it was 3%. I could double check and talk to you individually about that.
Sure.
Yeah, I have a question. So I heard you say something, but I just want to make sure. Did you say that the math that you did based on the governor's proposal on how to address the ADA cliff, right? That if we got that money based on those calculations, we would not technically have to deficit spend?
Yeah, based on our current P1 ADA, so this year's attendance, we'd get $5.7 million more. It would essentially close the gap for 22-23. And then in the out years, obviously, it's skewed because in 1920 and 2021, we have elevated ADA, and we experienced from 2021 to 21-22, we've experienced a massive drop in student enrollment. So in the out years, it's a little more uncertain, but just on my initial calculations, we would not be deficit spending.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I guess I have a comment. For the out years and the one-time revenues, I do remember Ms. Kessler had said, like, because I know we're like, well, because it's one time, we don't know what we're going to get. And so typically we wouldn't know until I've seen like towards the end that it's going to be fine. And it's probably going to be the same this time around.
Yeah, I mean, like I said at the beginning of the presentation, this is just the proposal. And in the last couple of years, it's been major swings. So yeah, the May revision, that's when we'll have a little bit more clarification, and the assumptions will tighten up a lot more. And then obviously in June is when we'll know all the major changes. But for right now, it's all proposals. There's still a lot that's going on. Obviously, the major one would be funding $1.2 billion for the ADA cliff and changing that whole structure. But like I said, a lot of the new revenues that we're seeing in the state of California is going towards one-time programs, restricted, which don't help us keep the school running, don't help, with our normal base education.
Basically, like in terms of like reoccurring, because I remember we had this conversation when we were negotiating, and it's like, well, we want to give increases, but because we don't know, and we only know with one time, we can give a one time and pay increase, but it wouldn't be. We would go into deficit based on projections, and so I'm just clarifying. And again, I know it's proposed, so I appreciate the clarification.
Yeah, just to agree with you. So when we talk about increases in salary or ongoing things of that nature. Those are all ongoing costs, along with the statutory increases to PERS and STIRS, the retirement systems. Those costs are always increasing, but if we're losing students and our average daily attendance is going down and there's nothing being done to prevent or increase our base funding, then those ongoing expenditures are unfunded, which means that we wouldn't be able to afford them, and we'd eat into our fund balance, but over time, it leads to insolvency.
Yeah, and just as a reminder to those of you serving on the board, when Governor Brown was governor, every year we would complain about his one-time funding mechanism. And now we wish we had Governor Brown's approach to one-time funding, because he would give districts just the money and say, you use it the way you think you need to use it. Governor Newsom is moving back toward the categorical uses of money, where you may use it for this purpose, and it doesn't really help the bottom line, because you have to do extra programs to be able to use that money, or you don't get it. So,
To add on to that, also, the local control accountability plan was developed for districts all over the state with different demographics of students and community to develop their learning plan of what they thought would be the best for their students. And so having all these categorical programs and restricted programs across the state, it's kind of like putting a cookie cutter, and it's like a one size fits all. Whereas Governor Jerry Brown, his approach was let the community, the board decide, stakeholders, teachers, students, let them decide what are their priorities based on their demographics of students, which is now we're in a complete 180. So, like I said, when the May revise happens, I'll keep you guys updated. I'll try to speak a little bit more clearly and slowly. Yeah, if any other questions, don't hesitate to reach out, and I'm more than happy to sit down and go over any of this with you.
I have one more question. So it might be for Superintendent Vidalis. Is there any talk of, okay, so it sounds good to give more money based on a prior years or a couple years ADA, but are there any talks on the state level of a new way of funding or a different way of funding that's not tied to ADA?
There are some proposals. They shifted from an average daily attendance calculation to an enrollment only calculation. So, which makes sense, right? If we had 100 students, we would staff our schools to serve the 100 students, not the 92 students that we might have with an average daily attendance. There are some proposals that are doing that, and I think it's going to be a negotiation between legislators and Governor Newsom to determine, how we're going to fund schools. I think there is a conversation and talk about raising the base funding level for the LCFF calculation, to increase that, which also increases supplemental and concentration dollars that are built on that. And that may be getting some traction. I know a lot of the educational advocacy groups are requesting that when possible, ongoing dollars be added to the base. And of course, you get you get COLA on top of that, because COLA is just intended to keep your spending power equal. So we'll see how things develop. The legislature does very little between now and May in terms of the budget. They do other legislative stuff like vaccine mandates and all this other stuff that we're going to hear a lot about. And then come May, they get into high gear and develop their budget. And in good years, they develop the budget and the language by June 30th. Last year, they developed the budget, and then they came up with the laws and the regulations. Like, we already started school when we got notice of what the regulations were going to be about some things they passed in June, which was really backwards and disruptive. We were already starting school in a pandemic, and then we find out, we started it wrong. We have to do it this way. So hopefully they can get that stuff done by June. So thank you. Thank you very much. It's great to, Michael, I don't know if you know, but it's great to present to a board that has some understanding of what you're saying, and they're engaged, and we don't know as much as you do, but enough to understand and engage in the conversation. So thank you for all that you guys have done to become more proficient in business language ease.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Laurel. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll try to speak a little bit slower, and I was a little bit excited to do my first presentation, but yeah, I'm always, when you do this day in and day out, it's the language, and I hope that you guys can, come by and we could talk more about it, but thank you.
Thank you. See your passion, so we appreciate it.
Cool. So that was just for information, so we'll move along to 10E, assignment of certificated personnel outside credential authorization for the 2021-2022 school year. To be in compliance with the California State Education Code, the Board of Trustees is required to approve the assignment of certificated personnel to teach outside their credential authorization. The district presently has 20 teachers who have signed teacher consent forms and who meet the criteria to teach subject areas outside their credential authorization through the following education codes: 44256B, 5 teachers; 44258.3, 2 teachers; 44258.7 C and D, 2 teachers; 44263, 1 teacher; T580005B, 13 teachers. The administration recommends approval of these assignments for the 2021-2022 school year.
And is this just, I know Mr. Valenti always says people that are in different, stages in getting their full credentials? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and this is an annual activity that the board undertakes. We would do it under consent, but Human Resources needs to submit a report that shows active votes for this. So we make it a vote, a motion and a second and a vote. So thank you.
If there are no comments, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a comment. I just want to commend, I know 2 of the teachers are in the room tonight, and just commend them. I know especially it's hard to teach one, but to volunteer to teach more than the one that you're assigned and certificated or credentialed in. I think that's just speaks volumes to your passion and your commitment to our students. So I wanted to just say thank you. And I saw some of the teachers in there. I think most of this is probably, some of it is ethnic studies, where the teachers are teaching their regular and as well as ethnic studies. So is that the case, or is it specific to certain subjects?
Yeah, it's more specific to other subjects. Ethnic studies, I think, is not one of these.
Okay.
Some of these, like Mr. Ali mentioned, are folks who are working on their credential and just need to do a couple of more coursework. Others are credentialed in one area, have some undergraduate courses in another area, and are teaching that, and so they can qualify for an authorization to teach that on an annual basis.
Yeah. Perfect. So I'll make a motion, unless there's any other comments, to approve the assignment of certificated personnel outside of credential authorization for 2021-2022 school year.
Second?
There's a first and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 That was unanimous. Next item is 11A, retirement classified personnel. The administration recommends approval of the retirement request for the following classified employee and request an appropriate resolution be prepared commending her for her years of service with the district. Elaine Wong, office assistant, number 1, at Ben Franklin. Date of hire was October 27th, 2002, and effective date is 12/31/2021.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the retirement request of Elaine Wong, effective 12/31/2021.
Second.
There is a first and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. That was unanimous. And congratulations, Ms. Wong, on your retirement as well. Next item is item 11E, job description and title revision for instructional assistant bilingual. The administration recommends approval of the updated job description and title for instructional assistant bilingual. These revisions are being made after consultation with federal program reviewers to align the duties and titles with requirements.
Yeah, just a bit of a background. A couple of weeks ago, our district underwent a federal program monitoring review, where they looked at various funding sources, federal funding sources, and some of the major activities that our district undertakes, and each of those funded by those revenues. And one of the programs was Title III. We do fund instructional aids out of that funding source. When they reviewed our job description, they just made some comments. It needs to be more specific to the Title III funding source. And so we made the revisions, and the board will approve it, and then it goes to Personnel Commission, and then they will approve it, and then we can assign the individuals in that category to that new job description.
Cool. Thank you. Any comments or questions from board members? If not, I will entertain a motion on this item.
I'll make a motion. The job description and title revision for instructional assistant bilingual, and as recommended by the administration, to approve.
Second.
Second.
There's a first and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That was unanimous. Next is item 12A, Board Policy Administrative Regulations, September 2021 CSBA Board Policy Updates, second reading. The board will review and revise Board Policy Administrative Regulations from September 2021 CSBA Board Policy Updates as stated in a second reading. Any comments or questions? If not, I will take a motion on this item.
I'll make a motion to approve board policy / administrative regulations, September 2021 CSBA policy board updates, second reading.
Second?
First and second, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That was unanimous. Next is 13 under board professional development. 13A, board study session CSBA 2021 annual education conference. Board members Manufa Liga Anuai and Clayton Koo will highlight some of their learnings, as well as give a report about their attendance at the California School Board Association CSBA 2021 annual education conference in San Diego from December 2nd to December 4th, 2021. I will let my colleague start off first.
Man, this is one of my favorite parts. I would like to say that we definitely had an amazing time. I think we had a reflection about that. And when I say amazing time, it was just so wonderful to see, you know, all of our board trustees from around the state be able to gather safely in person, and to be in a shared space. So I did write down in my folder, but of course it's on the dining table, so I'm taking this off the top of my head. The two workshops that sat with me, and surprisingly, was the legal symposium, because I took that when I initially came on to the board 7 years ago. And what was defining for me was that I got to sit in a room, and as they went through it, I identified my own growth and my level of understanding, which I appreciated, because throughout the room, I could tell who was new and who was seasoned. But the thing that I found alarming for some of our colleagues in other areas of the state was how they were basing a lot of their decisions around policy, and many times didn't have legal counsel to guide them through the process. And that gave me a level of appreciation for our superintendent, who many times when we're in discussion and we need someone to guide us through making a decision, an informed decision, you would always have us take a pause and bring in legal counsel. So there was a situation in, I believe it was Chula Vista, where the board went ahead and made a decision on a policy, and this was with regards to locker room protocols. It was something very, it wasn't major, but was the fact that they went ahead and made a decision without consulting with their legal counsel, which caused an uproar with a lot of their parents in their district. And the comment that was made after was that had they consulted first with legal counsel and had that time to reflect and review, they probably would have not had received the brunt of all of this uproar from parents. But what was also very helpful for me was when we talked about some of the new policies that come into play, and when we even talked about some of the initiatives that the governor has been introducing during the pandemic, how a lot of people were so confused. And when board members were asking questions in this space about how they were board trustees and how they were having difficulty in really adhering to some of the things that they were given to do as board trustees during the pandemic. And that resonated with me because, of course, we were also going through that. We were struggling and trying to make decisions around things that we didn't feel comfortable with, but we had no room or space, no autonomy, no authority to be able to make a change on that. So there was one of the panelists, an attorney, had actually said that he was starting to create sessions with other board trustees that wanted to be a little bit more innovative, which I thought was really risky. But he actually said that he started a session a little over a year ago and has been having groups with a bunch of board trustees where they were just a soundboard, but from the soundboard, they were actually coming together with all that feedback and taking it back to different boards and creating initiatives that actually would counter some of this is specific to the pandemic, just specific to the pandemic. And I was like, we've never done that. And the reason why I bring that up is because I just feel that we are consistently in a time where our hands are tied to adhere to some of the things that may not be reflective in the communities that we serve. So it was interesting for me to hear how they were straddling this fine line of balance and trying to be guided, one, with innovation, but two, just a level of just being human again. Just being human. And that was not something I expected to get at the legal symposium. But then again, we're in the middle of pandemic. We were discussing things that we've never had to discuss before. But what I even got more excited about was sitting again and meeting folks from different areas in the state. And it felt good. The legal symposium felt good. The other program, I don't remember the title, but I went to it because I had one of the board trustees from Long Beach who said she was going to learn more about this ambassador program, where the ambassador program during COVID has been working closely with the police department in Southern California, specifically around Gardena and Compton. And the reason why that was of interest to me was because of all of the unrest that we have been seeing across the country. So it was predominantly, of course, with participants, Black and brown boys. And the fact that I saw pictures of them working so closely during the pandemic with a lot of officers in Southern California that looked very different than what I've seen across the country, more specifically in the past 3 years. And how there was 3 parents that actually shared testimonies of how this program, she applauded the program, one of the mothers, because she said that they did it with such intentionality and authenticity. And it was very inclusive because they brought the parents in to engage and create the policy and a curriculum that they thought was something that they could adhere to with their kids. And they allowed parents to always be involved in the process. It wasn't dictated. The school districts there were also involved. And I don't always see that around law enforcement and schools in a positive light. So I found that to be really interesting. And I wouldn't say I'd want it here or don't want it here, but I do think it's important that we continue to learn how we implement and introduce ways that we create spaces of comfort and understanding around law enforcement and policing in our schools. So that hit home for me because I've always seen it in a negative light, and it was nice to see a program that was doing positive things, and for me in particular in Southern California and in areas that I've always seen unrest. So those are the two that had resonated with me. But I think, again, my highlight that I will say I will take to my grave is that we had just an amazing time, and we got to celebrate with Santa Clara and San Mateo County Board trustees and meet a lot of really, really great people whose heart is in this work. So I appreciate that. I really do. And I commend everyone that continues to stay rooted in this work. And I want to thank you, Mr. Laro, because I love how you're very engaging. Ms. Kessler was too. She just had so much detail. She knew all her stuff. And I know it's hard shoes to fill, but the reason why I bring it up is that in the legal symposium too, they talked about funding and they talked about a lot of the policies that are in place and initiatives. But I love that you speak to the one-time funding and you keep it in a positive light. I appreciate that because I get really frustrated with the one-time funding, just feeling like we get to start something, then we got to figure out how to keep it going. And it's really frustrating. So it was hard to comment on that. I've been hearing a lot about ELO, ELOP, ELOG, and it gets very confusing and overwhelming, especially when parents ask you. So I appreciate that you continue to take the deep dive with us. So thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. I'll give mine. I was going to say, I want to echo one of the comments you made regarding sort of how CSBA AEC to me is one of those times where like you just get to meet people that you don't get to see all year round. You get to hear from people on their challenges and what they're going on in their school district. And sometimes it's nice to hear that we're doing a lot better job than a lot of other school districts out there, especially when it comes down to personnel, policies, curriculums, you name it. It's nice to hear that we're actually at times doing a better job than them. So I feel kind of a little bit reassured on the stuff that our district's doing. I also say for me, a couple of the workshops that I attended, there was a couple that I attended. I actually was going to comment on the student health one, but you Trustee Jordan spoke on that, so I was going to skip that. A couple ones that I thought was interesting was, I know our school district's been working on workforce housing, and there was a panel on workforce housing. And to me, it was just kind of interesting just to attend and hear what other school districts across California was also discussing. So there were a couple of speakers from Berkeley and LA in regards to sort of the challenges they were facing in their communities. And for them, it was a mix of trying to ensure that they could provide housing for their teachers and their staff. But to them, they also framed it as more of like a moral obligation, that it was part of the school board's job, but the district's job to actually help build housing to support and prioritize teachers and staff. And to me, that was one of the things that I remember caught on, because they were talking about how it wasn't just because they needed it, but that rather it was more of an obligation they felt as just kind of a governing board to actually do something about what they saw was a problem. They also kind of were also talking about sort of figure out how best to actually build housing and also sort of change the argument from building it 10 years from now versus something we need to talk about right now, because you could talk about discussion of building housing today. It might take 5-10 years to actually see a full thing in construction and in the ground. And I think it was talking about how you can sort of sustain momentum for that project, especially when sort of the momentum might sort of stall down the road, especially when people are sort of tired of waiting and waiting and waiting. So it was definitely enlightening to hear what they were talking about there. There was also kind of focusing on sort of connecting money with the players involved. So kind of focusing on figure out how best to sort of maximize the housing they're building, but also figure out how they could actually ideally support the most teachers and staff at the same time. And then sort of kind of figure out community engagement, because I think they also had many times where in LA in particular, such a huge region, there might be a lot of community pushback, especially for some locations and sort of how big or how small some projects are going to be and sort of the potential impact in the community. So it was just kind of nice to hear sort of what they're working on, sort of kind of gain some learnings from what other people are doing across the state, especially as we kind of continue the work that we do too. There was also another workshop that I attended with Superintendent Vidalas. Actually, that works pretty well for what we heard tonight. It was actually about multi-year projections and fiscal planning. I think I mentioned it back in December that it was pretty much just kind of overview about the multi-year projections and figure out sort of when you need it, why you need it, and sort of what the value is of it. Kind of understanding that multi-year projections are just a projection, not a forecast. It's meant to change over time as you sort of learn from information. It's based on just a bunch of assumptions, and it's meant to adapt as you get more information. And they kind of focus that a good reserve does three main things. It gives you time in our district to react to it, time to plan and figure out how to resolve it, and figure out time to implement it and actually make it into place. But also at the same time, be wary and have a side of caution in hand just in case there are any political or financial or fiscal decisions that come from the state or the federal. So that was a really nice overview for that too. And then lastly, one of the workshops I attended on Saturday morning at 8 a.m., I remember this one well, was there was a workshop with San Ysidro Chamber of Commerce and the elementary school district and the high school district down there. It was kind of focused on sort of how to maximize partnerships with the schools, businesses, and the community to actually support and grow education in the community. So it was a mix of just 15 volunteers. They created an organization through the Chamber of Commerce, and the idea was that they were going to actually help support the goal of a cradle to career approach, to figure out sort of what they can do to sort of help encourage kids who want to stay in school, pursue higher education, and pursue a career. They never said what exactly, but they just wanted to make sure that kids had the tools and resources they needed to actually get ahead. One of the ones that I thought was actually a pretty cool project, they had a bunch of separate projects. One of them was that they actually brought 7th graders to workplace sites. So pretty much through like small restaurants, fast food chains at malls, local stores. And pretty much they got to like do the work of what the employees did for a day. They actually got to run the cashiers. They got to make some of the food in some ways. But then I think the cool thing was too that they actually had the kids make marketing flyers. So they actually got to use their business skills to actually make marketing materials. And there was actually one project I recall that they said that the business owner actually liked it so much, he actually made it his actual marketing flyer for his company because he just thought it was so cool and innovative. So yeah, so it was like really interesting just to hear sort of the work they were doing at the local level, but just also through just a small group of volunteers who could actually make something really cool. They had a mix of career presentations for 6th graders. They had inspirational movie nights, especially helping students understand how best to overcome obstacles and sort of achieve their dreams. And then they also worked on sort of expanding scholarships in the community through businesses and such. So I think there's just definitely an interesting sort of concept and approach that they're doing in sort of seeing what they could do, especially with a small group of volunteers, unpaid, for kind of the elementary school and the high school district as well. So yeah, so other than that, I enjoy the conference. It's nice to see people from across the state. Also get to just connect with my colleagues in a non-school board setting. So never going to complain about that. Yeah, so that's all I had. Next item is item 14, persons wishing to address the board on unagendized or closed session items. This portion of the agenda is available for individuals to comment on or address the board on any issue that is under the board's jurisdiction and not on the agenda or in any item addressed in closed session. Maximum time allowed for any speaker is 2 minutes. Are there any speakers? No, okay. If not, I'll move on 15.
Governance team member comments, reports, and board meeting reflection. Start off with Ms. Laganaway.
Thank you. This week, my theme has been hurry slowly. So I've been hurried to get things done and doing it slowly in my own pace. But I bring that up because I see that that's what we're continuing to do here, is that we're hurrying to make progress, but we're also being very mindful how we're doing it. And that's been my theme this week, and wanting to just continue that. At work, every day, I have a colleague who is the director of schools who does just such an amazing job of highlighting staff during Black History Month. And it's just been amazing to be reminded of just the wonderful, brilliant, amazing people that we're surrounded by. And I believe we need to be doing that every single day. So I love that we can continue to learn from each other in that way. But I do want to say that for me, more recently, some of you have seen in the news that in the South Pacific, the Kingdom of Tonga has been impacted by the volcanic eruption. And there are just so many relief efforts that are happening. Jefferson, PIT, Pacific Islands Together has been receiving donations, and they will continue to receive donations during their food distribution days. So I do want to put that out to our families. Bayshore is also receiving donations, and that will continue, especially since parts of Tonga have been impacted by some acid rain. So every time they start thinking they're moving forward, unfortunately, they're taking a few more steps back. So we also have another effort here in Daly City at Canapa's office. He's also receiving donations, but I just want to continue to ask everyone that sometimes you don't think you can give, but you can definitely always give, because there are a lot of unhoused people just living on the beaches, and they could really use our help. So I'm just extending that ask as we continue to collect donations throughout San Mateo County. Continue to be well. I love that we're expanding our vaccination. The pediatric vaccination is so much needed. And yeah, I'm just very, very grateful, but wishing you all a wonderful rest of the week.
So this was a really good meeting. I know we asked a lot of questions, and we're probably going into time here, but I wanted to thank all the speakers today for their presentations. It was really helpful. I also want to thank our fellow trustees for their comments and discussions around what they learned at the annual education conference. It's really impactful to hear that all of us had similar experiences and learned so much. I will say I know that Superintendent Vidal is listening to some of these things, and I know we talked about when I had presented a few things that I think we all agreed that we wanted to see happen in our district. And so I would just say if you could keep us in the loop on how those things are moving forward, it would be really beneficial. And then, I just want to wish everyone well, make sure that you're continuing to stay safe as the mask mandates are being rolled back, because we want to continue to keep our community safe regardless of the reduction in cases. We want to make sure that we keep the reduction happening and not going back up at any point. Thank you.
For me, I was just saying, great meeting. Just stay safe and healthy, and just hope you guys all have a great President's Week as well, too. Next item is item 16, convene to closed session. I'm going to do a 5-minute recess, convene at 8, 9, 10.
9:10 would be good. There's quite a few items for them to sign, Ms. Kovarai. Yep.
Okay.
Don't leave the room. Sign your papers, and then we can 9:10. Right.